Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me okay? All right, great. Thank you for responses. So today we're switching units. We had our exam summarizing Unit 1 and 2 on, well, half of Unit 2 on Monday. And today we are starting a new unit focused on, well, today's lecture is going to be on animal tissues and organ systems, but over the course of the next couple of weeks, we are going to go over human organ systems and their functions and their structure. Before doing that, I'd like to, as always, set a couple of reminders. But before I even go there, I wanted to make a couple of notes for the exam. So the average score for the exam is 88%, which is amazingly well. There was some activity which was disappointing to me personally. So here's what I noticed. People tended to leave the browser while taking exam. People tended to leave the browser to consult other resources. Okay, so I assumed that was cheating, and this kind of behavior is reportable to the Office of Student Affairs as academic misconduct. I want to tell you as clearly as I can, do not do this again. I have a list of people who did this. I will be emailing you, calling you out on your behavior, and I will give you, this is my warning to you, do not leave your browser while taking the exam. The whole point of the lockdown browser was to prevent you from doing that. And because people did not have access to lockdown browser, I trusted, I had good faith in you guys, and about 20% kind of used it. And I am not happy about that at all. By my personal feelings aside, the grade is meaningless if the test, you cheated on the test, okay? A with cheating will be, you know, on paper equal to A without cheating. And I think cheating is unfair to other students. I personally detest cheating. So I will be giving you 0 for the exam next time. And I am going to be reporting you to the Student of Academic Affairs if you leave the browser during the exam. Also, I will make the time that you have to answer the question shorter for the exam. I originally intended making it 45 seconds per question. People were concerned that it was not enough. After looking at statistics, I saw that it would be enough. And extra 15 seconds per question just gave the opportunity for people to look up the answers, that 20% of people to look up the answers. So there's that. I want to stress, do not cheat, because cheating is discoverable and cheating will get you in trouble. Cheating will get you at, in best case scenario, 0 for the exam, and the Z grade, the Z designation for the grade for the course, indicating that you cheated. It will remain on your transcript forever, and let everybody know who will look at the transcript that will let you know that you're a cheater. Worst case scenario, if you have already a record of cheating, it can get you out of school, okay? So do not do this again. Exams were closed book, closed notes, as all exams are. I mean, imagine if you walk into the classroom and you take the exam, you don't consult your notes in the classroom. In fact, some professors require you to leave your bags in one corner of the room for you to not have access to a cell phone, for you to not have access to the books, etc. So bottom line, do not cheat on the exam, because there is a high likelihood that I will see it, and there is 100% likelihood next time that I will report you and give you a 0 for the exam. On that optimistic note, let me share my screen here and get to the lecture. Are there any questions about this policy? Alrighty. So a couple of reminders as usual. Quiz 4 is open, and this time it is not due on Friday. It is due on Monday, February 22nd. So you will have a weekend if you work on weekends to complete it. Quiz 5 opens immediately afterwards, which is technically midnight on 23rd. And it will be due on this quiz. This next quiz will be due on Friday, the 26th. And we have a participation assignment that is due today. It is a quiz kind of participation assignment. And it is going to be a multiple choice kind of situation with 8 points total. So today's lecture is going to be on animals, tissues, and organ systems. I'm going to go over various types of tissues and where they can be found and what are their functions, and introduce the term of organ systems if you haven't covered it before, and go overview the various organ systems in the human body. So this picture here, if you're wondering what it is an artificial tissue, and tissue is a group of cells that are interconnected and communicate to each other. So actually those are a group of cells suspended in extracellular matrix, which is an extracellular matrix is a supportive network of proteins and carbohydrates secreted by the cells. And what is special about this tissue is it was created artificially. It was created using a bioprinter. So it's not natural. It wasn't produced by a human body. It was created by a bioprinter. So animal anatomy and physiology are fascinating. But first, let me introduce uh, some definitions here. So anatomy is the study of the structure of animal bodies, and physiology is the study of function of body parts. So we don't have to think about far-fetched example. Think of our bodies when you think of anatomy and physiology, and that's what I'll do for the next couple of weeks. I will not focus on the broad animal anatomy and physiology. I will just keep it limited to the human body. So what's anatomy and and physiology do we have? This image kind of summarizes what we have, and I'll go over it now. So nervous system is an organ system that controls the skeletal and muscular systems. And skeletal and muscular system, they provide balance to our bodies. So to move a muscle, in order to move your hand or to blink or whatever, the work is it is performed by muscles and bones. But the initiation of this work is guaranteed by the nervous system. So the nerves are actually act like a whip. They provide an impulse to a muscle, and then the muscle contracts or relaxes. So respiratory system absorbs oxygen and emits carbon dioxide. So we breathe in oxygen and emit carbon dioxide and breathe out carbon dioxide because we don't need it. And remember, oxygen is needed for aerobic respiration. We need oxygen in our cells for our cells to convert energy to work, convert carbs to work. So, and this process is performed by mitochondria. So actually mitochondria are the organelles within the cells that need oxygen. And remember, the particular parts in the energy producing cycle or process that needs oxygen is the electron transport chain. This is the only energy producing process that needs oxygen. Now, the endocrine system is the system of glands in our body that helps regulate the heart rate, helps regulate the metabolic rates, and body fluid composition. So, a very common, if you have an increased heart rate out of the blue, if you go to the doctor and say, "Hey, I wake up with an increased heart rate and I don't know what's going on because I'm not running, I'm not nervous, I'm not anything." So, if you go to the doctor, like one of the first tests they will typically order is going to be so-called thyroid stimulating hormone, because if there is some abnormality with your thyroid function, which is a gland belonging to the endocrine system, it has an impact. The hormones produced by the thyroid gland, they impact the heart rate. If there's too much of if there's too much of the thyroid hormone, and I will cover it later, what kind of hormone, your heart rate will speed up. If there's too little of this hormone, then your heart rate is going to slow down, and you will feel sluggish, you will feel lazy, and you will start gaining weight because you're not active. Okay, so, but this is just one of the examples. There's the endocrine system is quite complex, and increased heart rate can be due to multiple reasons. But one of the first tests that the doctors will order is typically this TSH, or thyroid stimulating hormone. So wastes accumulate in the digestive and urinary system for elimination later. So if we eat the food, not all of the food is going to be used up for energy, obviously, because we go to the bathroom for a number two, one time a day, hopefully. Sometimes more often if we're nervous, sometimes less often if we have other issues. So these wastes are whatever we get out of the body is not used by our system for energy or else for other functions, and or water, for instance, that is not used up for the body is excreted with the urinary system. Our reproductive system produce gametes. And gametes are again sex cells, which are haploid, and they're used for, they participate in the fertilization from two gametes. One zygote forms, and the zygote can eventually form into a human being. So food and drinks, well, entered in the digestive system. We eat them, we need them, food and drinks, for energy, and, well, water to support our various reactions in the human body. Integumentary system gives off excess heat, which is basically skin, and it gives off excess heat produced by active muscles. So we need to um, we are so-called endotherms. Humans are an organism that regulates its own body temperature, and integumentary system as well as an endocrine system, they help human body regulate the temperature. If we are too hot, we start sweating, and we actually nervous system participate in the thermal regulation as well, because we in our brain we kind of know that if it's hot we need to cool ourselves down, and we need to a shade if we're in the sun, or we need to move to a cooler room because we're too hot. So this behavior is kind of part of the response to thermal regulation. Circulatory system transports oxygen, water, and food molecules, hormones, and metabolic waste. So it's basically circulatory system, or blood and vessels are help us get nutrients to all of the cells around the body, help us get oxygen to all of the cells, to the mitochondria of all of the cells around our body. It helps transport hormones around our body, and so on, and metabolic waste. So lymphatics and metabolic waste, as an example of the metabolic waste is carbon dioxide, which we exhale from our respiratory system. So lymphatic system collects and transports plasma leaking out of the blood vessels, and immune system protects the body from infection if injury occurs. So I'm covering much more than there is actually on the slide, and do not be frustrated or intimidated by that. Each individual organ system will be covered in the following lecture. So I will go over it in much more slides. I'm just giving you an overview for you to have an example right away what I'm talking about. Okay. Any questions about what I've talked about so far? Okay. Animal bodies have organizational hierarchy. So what I mean by that, I mean that, well, similar to the all biological organisms, the organization of life, we can apply the same principle to organization of animal bodies. So remember, in organization of life, we went from atoms to molecules to cells and so on, or organelles, organs, and so on. So in animal bodies, the hierarchy starts. The smallest part of the on the hierarchy ladder is the cell. So cells make up tissues, tissues make up organs, organs make up organ systems, and this figure here depicts the four type of tissues that we have. We have epithelial tissue, connective tissue, muscle tissue, and nervous tissue. So the example here gives a hierarchy of the digestive system. So the digestive system consists of cells which form into tissues. For instance, the inner lining of the stomach is a tissue that produces acid, and this acid gives us much benefits because it kills the bacteria in the food and viruses as well, most of them, at least. It helps us break the food down. The acid helps soften the food and break it apart, and multiple other benefits, and helps absorptions of the nutrients and vitamins. So organs make up organ system. Our digestive system does not only consist of the stomach. It starts actually in the mouth and continues all the way down to anus. But it also consists of the liver, the pancreas are all the part of digestive system. And the digestive system is like a specific example of the organ systems. All right, Christine asks, so what should we take away from this slide? If you're taking about this current slide here, the takeaway of the slide is basically the organizational hierarchy of animal bodies. So the hierarchy goes from cells to tissues to organ systems. Cell is the smallest part on the hierarchy, is the lowest block on the building block of the hierarchy. Tissues goes next. Cells form tissues, tissues from organs, and organs make up organ systems. So this is the takeaway. Oh, Lauren asks whether I can go more in depth with the tissue types, and I will in the following slides. So specialized cells build tissues. All animals are made up of multiple cell types, and there are 4 cell types. And true body tissues are found in all animals besides the sponges. So sponges or porifera are the only animal organisms that do not have true tissue types. And if you look at the sponge, I mean, you can easily mistake it for a plant because it often does not even look like an animal, but it is. So groups of cells interact and organize into tissues. The epithelial tissue creates a barrier lining that surfaces the organ, so it often lines the insides of the organs. So it is found in the stomach. The epithelial tissue secretes digestive enzymes. So basically, I mentioned this before. The stomach lining so stomach is lined with epithelial tissue, and in the stomach in particular, this epithelial tissue is specialized to produce stomach acid. So tissues build organs. Many animals have organs, which are units made up of multiple tissues working together. And so example of the organs are muscles, and contraction of the muscle tissue mechanically breaks down food in the stomach, while digestive enzymes secreted by epithelial tissue break the food down chemically. So this is the example of the organ and the functions of the organ. And finally, the organ systems, and I'm kind of repeating myself what I've said so far in what I've said before on the previous slide, but this is just repetition is mother of learning, so I'm just repeating. So organs build organ systems. 2 or more organs physically or functionally interact and work together, forming organ systems. So in digestive system consists of multiple organs such as salivary glands, stomach, intestines, rectum, pancreas, liver, and gallbladder. All of these organs participate in digestion and therefore are a part of the digestive system. So the 4 tissue types in animals. All animal tissues consist of cells embedded in an extracellular matrix, a supportive network of proteins and carbs secreted by the cells. So tissues fall into 4 broad categories: epithelial, connective, muscle, and nervous. So, and this table here outlines the functions of the tissue, as well as it describes what this tissue look like, or what this tissue would look like under a microscope and so on. So epithelial tissue is a single or multiple layer of cells of flattened cube shape or columnar cells. And the function is to protect the organ, to secrete the hormones, or secrete stomach acid if we're talking about the stomach, to absorb nutrients if we're talking about the lining of the intestines. Um, what else? If we're talking about the skin, it's obviously the major function of the epithelial cells is protection. Protect us from the bacteria, protect our bodies from the mechanical injuries and so on. Connective tissue consists of cells scattered in prominent extracellular matrix, and the function of the connective tissue is that of support, adhesion, insulation, attachment, and transportation. And I will go over it in more detail in the following slide. This is just an overview. The muscles look like elongated cells that contract when stimulated, and its main function is movement. Well, it's probably the only function is movement. And nervous tissue consists of cells that transmit electrochemical impulses, and its function is that of rapid communications among cells. And this rapid communication basically, uh, what we know, what the everyday example, every second example that we know, the rapid communication facilitates muscle movement. It's just one example. So, epithelial tissue, the first type of tissue, they cover body surfaces. They're tightly packed cells that coat body's internal and external surfaces, such as skin, mucous membranes, the lining of the digestive tract, and lungs. So, epithelial tissue also forms glands, and glands are secretory organs that produce and release substances into the blood or into ducts. An example of the gland are mammary glands, sweat glands, salivary glands, thyroid gland is more, is another example of gland. So, epithelial tissues, there are four types of the epithelial tissues, but all of them kind of have common characteristics in the sense that they have two sides. So each epithelial tissue has a free or exposed surface over here. For instance, if we take the columnar tissue, it's going to be on this side. And the opposite side is anchored to a layer of the extracellular matrix called a basement membrane. So this is a basement membrane, and this is the exposed surface. So if we look at the intestine, then this part would be connected to the underlying part of the intestine, and this part would be facing the inside of the intestine. This part would kind of absorb the nutrients and whatnot. So there are, as I mentioned, there are four types of the epithelial tissue. We have simple squamous epithelial tissue. It's a single layer of the flattened cells that allow substances to pass by diffusion and osmosis. We see the simple squamous cells in lining of the blood vessels. We also see them in alveoli in the lungs. So our lungs consist of bronchioli, alveoli, and the alveoli are lined with the simple squamous cells, which kind of facilitate the gas exchange. Now, simple cuboidal epithelial tissue is a single layer of cube-shaped cells that secrete and absorb substances. So they often are found in glands, and the lining of the kidney tubule. So they are found in kidneys and glands. Now, the simple columnar cells over here is an epithelial tissue which is found that secretes and absorbs substances. So we, as I mentioned, we would find it in the lining of the digestive tract, because in when we digest food we also absorb nutrients and useful substances. So we have the simple columnar epithelial tissues to thank for that. Where else they are where else they're found is in bronchi of the lungs and in uterine tubes. And finally, the stratified squamous tissues. We have they have multiple layers, and they are flattened cells that protect areas that are subject to abrasion. So any areas that are subject to damage, they're protected by the stratified squamous cells. And those stratified squamous cells, they make up the outer layer of the skin, of our skin. So our skin protects us from abrasions. Our skin protects us from mechanical damage. Okay, I see some comment or a question in the chat. Will we have to know the different types of epithelial tissue or just epithelial in general? Yes, you'll have to know the types of the different epithelial tissue. There are just four, not much to learn. All right, the next type of tissue, the second type of tissue, is the connective tissue, and they have several functions. The connective tissue generally fills spaces in the body, protects organs, and provides structural support. So connective tissue cells are scattered throughout the extracellular matrix and in various parts of the body. We have, let's see, 6 types of connective tissue. So the first one is the loose connective tissue, and this is what it looks like under the microscope. So loose connective tissue holds organs in place and attaches epithelial tissues to other tissues. So our organs are not just, by the law of gravity, our organs should be just located towards the end of our bodies, towards the lower parts of our bodies, but they're not. They're kind of suspended in within the various parts of the bodies, and this suspension is kind of guaranteed, is performed by the loose connective tissue. So where is it found? It's found under the skin and between organs. Now, the second type of connective tissue is called dense connective tissue. And when you think about dense connective tissue, think about tendons and ligaments. This type of connective tissue consists of cells in a dense matrix of protein fibers, and it connects muscle to bone and bone to bone. So dense connective tissue connects muscle to bone and bone to bone, or you can think about tendons and ligaments. Now, the next one is adipose tissue, and adipose tissue is basically fat cells in a minimal extracellular matrix. It stores fat for energy, and where it is found, another function of fat is not only energy, but insulation. Like if you would like to move in a colder region, you will likely benefit from putting some fat on you, because the people who have more fat on their bodies, they don't get cold very easily. So the adipose tissue can be found beneath skin, between muscles, around heart, and around joints. So next connective tissue is blood.
Quick question, Professor.
Yeah, go ahead.
Is adipose tissue not considered a type of loose connective tissue?
Nope, it's separate.
Okay, because I'm in a different class and we categorize adipose and areolar as loose connective tissue.
Adipose, and what is the second one?
Areolar tissue?
Well, no. Well, not the way I know it. So adipose tissue is separated into separate tissue because the cells are different. The structure of the cells is slightly different.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. So blood consists of the red blood cells, which are red dots here, erythrocytes, and platelets in a liquid matrix called plasma. So the 3 components of blood is red blood cells, platelets, and plasma. It transports gases, hormones, wastes, and nutrients. And blood is found inside the blood vessels. Okay, so blood technically is a type of a connective tissue. Cartilage, you probably know the cartilage very well, because our ears consist of cartilage, our nose consists of cartilage, and if you have problems with the cartilage in your knees, then there's a specific name for that kind of disease, and you would have to undergo the operation to make your knees work well again. Usually if you play like professional sports, then there's a high probability that you will develop problems with the cartilage, and reconstructive surgeries for cartilage and such are performed very frequently on professional athletes, such as, well, I'm into soccer, so I'm going to talk about soccer. soccer players have frequently problems with cartilage in their knees. So it provides basically flexible support, the cartilage. It provides flexible support in ears, joints, bone ends, and the respiratory tract. And finally, bone is the sixth type of the connective tissue and consists of cells in a matrix of collagen and minerals. Bones are very dense, okay? So this density is provided by the process called mineralization. The bones are very dense because of the minerals that are contained in them. And it provides the firm support in the skeleton. We are able to stand upright because of our bones, well, and because our muscles, because of the interaction actually between the muscles and the bones. Which brings me to the next type of tissue, and those are muscle tissue. The muscle tissue consists of cells that contract when electrically stimulated, and they're electrically stimulated by the nervous tissue, which comes next. So uh, the proteins that mediate muscle contractions are actin and myosin. And if you look at the two types of muscles under the microscope, you will see that they are um, striped or also striated. It's another word for striped. Okay, and they're striped because of this of these two proteins, actin and myosin, and which basically contract, slide in between each other, providing muscle contraction and muscle relaxation. So there are three types of muscle tissue: the skeletal muscle, cardiac muscle, and the smooth muscle. The skeletal tissue provides skeletal tissue moves the bones. Uh, the they look like these elongated cells with many nuclei. It is attached to the bone on one end and produces movement under voluntary conscious control. Now, cardiac muscle, we do not consciously control the cardiac muscle. It is controlled automatically. It contracts and relaxes automatically. It also looks straight under the microscopes, and it consists of the short branch cells, each with one nucleus. So multiple nuclei here, only one nucleus here. Um, so it makes up the walls of the heart and contracts the heart chambers under involuntary control. Again, we cannot control our cardiac muscle. And finally, smooth muscles. Smooth muscle tissue helps organs push substances through the body. So smooth muscles we can see them in the digestive tract. They in our digestive tract, our intestines are in constant movement, and we do not control that movement. But this movement is needed to push the food along the intestine. Okay, and this movement is provided by the smooth muscle, is facilitated by, is a better word, by the smooth muscles. And apart from digestive tract, we also can see the smooth muscles in the arteries. So arteries can constrict and become more narrow, or can relax and become more wide. And this movement of the arteries and blood vessels in general is facilitated by the smooth muscles.
Can I ask a quick question about that
Yeah,
one?
go ahead.
Just I like to write like examples about each one. So for the skeletal one, could you just say like running, like just like your
Exactly right.
body?
So whatever muscles you can control, like muscles in your hand,
Yeah.
muscles in your tongue is a muscle. So yeah, skeletal muscles are any muscles that you can voluntarily move.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, cardiac and smooth muscles, you cannot control them.
Control. Yeah.
Yeah, they're automatic. So cardiac muscle is controlled by autonomous nervous system. We'll get to it later. It can become too difficult. So cardiac muscle is in the heart, and we cannot control it. And smooth muscle is in the digestive tract, in the intestines, and the blood vessels, and we cannot control that either.
Thank you.
Okay. Nervous tissue is the final tissue, the fourth type of tissue that we have, and its main function is to transmit electric impulses, which are also can be viewed as information. So nervous tissue transmits information. It uses electric signals to rapidly transmit information within an animal body. And nervous tissue is composed of cells called neurons, which form communication networks, and neuroglia, which support the neurons. So neurons in this picture are this dark violet kind of cells, and neuroglia are the smaller cells, which kind of provide the support for the neurons, which hold them in place. So the type where the nervous tissue is found is in the brain, in spinal cord, and nerves. So organ systems are
I have a
interconnected.
quick question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Are there different types of nervous tissues, or is there just one type?
Just one.
Okay.
And nervous tissue, remember, is composed by the two types of cells. First type is neurons, and second type is neuroglia. But there's just one type for nervous tissue. Any other questions before I talk about how organ systems are interconnected and give examples? Okay, organ systems are interconnected, and organs are arranged in organ systems that have interconnected structure and functions. So, for instance, the nervous and endocrine systems coordinate communication. The nervous system specializes in rapid electrical communication, and it is actually, you could measure it, this rapid kind of communication, and I'm going to go over how you could measure it yourself probably on the next lecture, focused on the nervous system because I'm running out of time here. And the endocrine system produces and secretes hormones, which are used for chemical communication. So if the nervous system basically detects, interprets, and responds to stimuli from outside and within the body. So with our eyes, we kind of detect the visual stimuli. With our ears, we detect the auditory stimuli. Even on our tongue, there are taste receptors, and technically taste receptors are the part of the nervous system. So we can detect various kind of stimuli and respond to them. So the endocrine system produces hormones and works with the nervous system to control many bodily functions. So for instance, if we see something scary, our endocrine system starts secreting hormones called adrenaline and gets our heart pumping, gets us sweating, gets our ready for the fight or flight response. Okay, so this is just one small example how they're interconnected. The skeletal and muscular systems support and move the body. The skeletal system consists of bones, cartilage, tendons, and ligaments. And each skeletal muscle is attached to a bone, which is moved as the muscle contracts. So the skeletal system provides the framework for muscles to attach, making movement possible. And the muscular system then supports posture and enables body to move. So what is not shown here is the nervous system, which of course initiates the movement of the muscles. But let's say we think like I wanna lift my hand. So the nervous system kind of sends the signal to the muscle of the hand, like move hand, and basically the underlying skeletal system ensures that our hand looks like a hand. Okay, that our hand has the shape it has, and muscle kind of move those bones around.
May I ask a quick question on that?
Oh, okay. Hold on, sorry for my reaction was a bit loud. Go ahead.
Sorry. For the nervous system, if you damage your nervous system, is this how people have like they become paralyzed in certain areas of their body because of the damage to their nervous system? Is this like one of the main contributing factors?
Yes, and you should ask this question again on Friday when I talk about nervous system, because yeah, I'm going to touch on that. So there are various forms of paralysis sometimes, but nearly all of them are caused by the damage to the nervous system. It can be damage to the brain or damage to the spinal cord in various locations. And if the damage is, well, I'm going to talk about it later, but the bottom line is yes.
Thank you.
Most of the paralyses are caused by the damage to the nervous system.
Thank you.
So these three systems, digestive, circulatory, and respiratory system, they work together to acquire energy. So, and we need ATP so that cells can perform work, so that muscles can perform work, so that, well, neurons can fire, and so on. And this energy is acquired through interaction of these systems. So in the digestive system, the nutrients are broken down into chemical components. In the circulatory system, thus the nutrients are distributed around the body, and basically the respiratory system delivers the intakes the oxygen required to acquire energy, pardon the weird formulation, and excretes the carbon dioxide, which is toxic, which in itself is toxic to the body. So we eat the food is broken down in the digestive system. The nutrients are absorbed from the intestines and sometimes from the stomach even. And these nutrients are carried around the body, including like glucose, the sugars, are carried around the body to various tissues and various cells. And nutrients and oxygen, in fact, are carried around the cells. And the CO2 is picked up by the blood, carried to the lungs, and exhaled because it is toxic and we don't need it. So these three systems, the urinary system, integumentary system, and immune and lymphatic systems, they work together to protect the body. So the urinary system, it excretes wastes and maintains volume and composition of bodily fluids. If we have problem with our kidneys, we can start to retain water, and we'll see our limbs, usually feet first, swell up. And like this is kind of, if the doctor takes a look at your feet and they're swollen, the doctor will test the heart function and the kidney function first. So integumentary system, which is, think skin, okay? Skin keeps out the microorganisms, it controls the temperature and conserves water. And immune and lymphatic systems consist of various cells that fight off the infections. So these cells do not only fight off the infections, they also fight off the cancer cells. So if a normal cell started dividing uncontrollably all of a sudden due to some mutation in its DNA, the cells of our immune system can kill it. And actually one of the reasons why older cancer tends to appear in the older people is because their immune system is weaker compared to the immune system of the younger people. So, and finally, the reproductive system produces the next generation. The reproductive system relies on hormones from the nervous and endocrine system to produce gametes. And females carry the offspring in a uterus, which is made out of muscle, nervous tissue, and epithelium. And it is able to function only with the help of the circulatory and excretory systems. So the reproductive system itself manufactures gametes and enables the female to carry and give birth to the offspring. I'm not going to cover everything, which is a pity. I'll just cover it next time. So the interaction between the organ systems helps maintain homeostasis, or a state of internal constancy. So animal bodies maintain various forms of homeostasis, including stable temperature, blood pressure, and fluid composition. And the temperature is kind of a good example because we all know that how we regulate temperature. If we are too hot, we start sweating. If we are too cold, we start shivering, and kind of start working our muscles to warm up. But this picture here kind of represents, depicts how the organ system interact. So homeostasis is maintained by the negative feedback loops. I do want to cover negative and positive feedback loops and some other stuff before the lecture is over, and I'm going to try to power through it. So homeostasis is maintained by the negative feedback loops, and the negative feedback loop is depicted here on the example of the thermostat. So let's move away from our bodies for a minute and return to them a minute later to apply the same principle to the thermoregulation in the body. But let's look at how your room temperature is maintained. If the room temperature is the temperature that you set it, and let's say you set it at 68 degrees, If the room is too warm, then the thermostat will sense it and trigger the heater, the air conditioner. So the air conditioner will then cool the room to the comfortable 68 degrees. And once the thermostat senses that the room temperature is okay, it will kind of turn off. It will stop triggering the work of the air conditioner. And if the room is too cold, the thermostat will detect it and will trigger the work, will set off the heater, and the heater will heat the room until the comfortable temperature of 68 degrees is reached. And once the thermostat senses that the room temperature is comfortable again, it will stop triggering, it will stop kind of making the heater work. So a similar thing happens in our bodies. It is called the negative feedback loop. Okay, this kind of loop is called the negative feedback loop. As a contrast, the positive feedback loop, it kind of amplifies the changes rather than counteracting them. So in the negative feedback loop, there's a change is sensed, and then the body tries to counteract that change. In the positive feedback loop, a change is sensed, and then a whole body goes haywire until something changes. Okay, some external factor gives the signal that the body still should stop this out of control reaction. So the positive feedback loop, the example that is not shown here, but that is kind of very illustrative, is childbirth. Once the process of childbirth starts, there's nothing in our body that can stop it. Okay, so once the child gets going, there's nothing you can do to stop it until the child is born. So, and because there's nothing you can do to stop it, it's kind of, the body enters into the positive feedback loop. Like more hormones are secreted that contract the uterus, and the further into labor, the stronger the uterus contracts to get the baby out. Okay, and this kind of escalation of the reaction is characteristic of the positive feedback loop. So another example of the positive feedback loop is blood clotting. If you cut yourself shaving or cut yourself while cooking, the blood spills out of the vessels, and the surrounding tissues sense that the blood is out. And because our bodies can sense like when the blood is not in the blood vessels, the body reacts by first by releasing platelets that will clog up the hole in the vessels, and then produce clotting factors that will patch up the hole in the blood vessels. So the positive feedback loop, basically, the more once blood is spilled out, the clotting factors are released, and they will keep being released until there is no more blood in surrounding tissues. So animals regulate body temperature and in two ways. They can be separated into two groups called endotherms and ectotherms. We are endotherms because we can regulate our own temperature. So endotherms regulate their own temperature, and ectotherms do not. They depend on the surrounding environment to regulate its temperature. So like frogs and toads and snakes are ectotherms. Fishes are ectotherms, and non-avian reptiles and amphibians are ectotherms. So, and all invertebrates, which are think insects, okay, they're ectotherms. Now, how does the negative feedback loop work in our body to regulate temperature? It's basically through the interaction between nervous, endocrine, and muscular systems. So if the temperature is too high, our hypothalamus, the thermoreceptors in the hypothalamus, which is close to the brain, skin and other organs detect the temperature, and we start sweating. Our blood vessels dilate, so smooth muscles in our blood vessels cause them to dilate, to kind of cool down. Dilation kind of helps with cooling down. We have voluntary changes in behavior, like we sense that it's too sunny outside, it's too hot, so I'm going to move into the shade. Now, if the temperature is too low, the thermoreceptors in the hypothalamus, skin, and other organs detect this temperature, and hypothalamus initiates heat-promoting mechanisms such as shivering. The muscle work helps heat up the body. The blood vessels constrict, voluntary changes in behavior ensues. So we add clothing, we move to a warmer place, etc. So this is, I didn't cover all the slides, so I'll cover it next time because it's 10:20. Are there any last minute questions that you'd like me to answer? So endotherms question, endotherms can control their temp. That's exactly right. Endotherms can control their own temperature, and ectotherms rely on the surrounding environment to keep their temperature in a comfortable level. Lauren asks, did we cover everything for class activity today? I think so, but let me go and double check, and if we didn't, you'll get a free 2 points. And Fabrizio asks the same question. The answer is same. I think everything was covered, but if I didn't, then you'll just get 2 free points. All right, guys, thanks for your attention, and I'll see you back here on Friday.
Really, really quick, can you tell me just like one example of the ectotherm? Really quick.
Ectotherm?
Yeah, sorry.
Sure. A snake, a frog, an insect like a bee is an ectotherm.
Okay.
All of the invertebrates. Is that enough? Or fish
Yeah, that's
is an
perfect.
ectotherm.
Yeah. I kind of was slow in writing, so I got it now.
No problem.
Thank you.
Yeah, remember that the transcript is posted along with the Zoom video,
Yeah.
so you can always go to the
back.
transcript, type in endotherm or ectotherm, and see a list of words
Yeah.
that are
Thank you.
said near the ectotherm. All right, thanks guys, and see you on Friday.